Welcome to the Battlefield Show. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and as always, I'm joined by Sammy Boy. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Once again, ready to hop in, talk some Battlefield. So let's jump in, chat about 64-player modes in Battlefield 2042 over the holidays, as well as some Portal. Let's jump right in. This podcast is a production of Uplink Media Group. Uplink is a podcast network dedicated to highlighting the love and experience of gaming and pop culture. Check out our other shows, Star Wars Uplink and The Forge, the Halo Infinite podcast, as well as our YouTube channels for even deeper dives into Battlefield, Star Wars, and more. YouTube.com/Uplink podcast and StarWarsUplink.com. Okay, Sammy, 64-player modes. I just want to preface this conversation and just say, this is what they should have done in the beginning. It's so much better. Like, it feels more Battlefield than the 128 players. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion. What do you think?
I pretty much agree with that. And that's coming from me, who I've really enjoyed. Like, I love the chaos of 128 players, but even then, like, it's just objectively better. It runs better. It seems a lot more balanced. There's a few tweaks that I guess we'll probably touch on that later on, but there's a few things that they still need to sort of fix up about the mode. Obviously, there's a lot they need to fix up about the game in general, but
I have some notes.
In the mode itself, I think it plays a lot better, but there's still a few like tweaks they need to make. But overall, it just feels more like what Battlefield has felt like in the past, and I think they should still offer the 128 player modes, because I've had a blast with those. Just the chaos of that is something that I've always liked about Battlefield, is just those moments where there's just so much going on that you kind of don't even know like what is happening. But it is nice to get a kind of like more relaxed mode where you actually have the time to flank enemies, and you have the time to get to positions where you can actually set up and be, like make the most of your tactics and stuff like that, rather than it's just like everyone is just in the same spot and there's just explosions everywhere. That's probably the main thing that I've noticed about it, that it definitely plays more similar to, the previous games in the franchise.
It just captures the flow that you come to expect with Battlefield. Like, I am not a terrible gamer. Like, I've gotten a lot better on PC over the last 2 years because I got my first PC 2 years ago. So I've been on this journey to get better at mouse and keyboard play. And, like, I've been playing a crap ton of Halo, and I'm close to, I think it's Platinum in the ranked modes. Like, I'm putting in the work, and I'm not, like, a terrible player. But 128 player Battlefield, like, I'm going 5 kills and 20 deaths, and I hopped in before we recorded, played for about an hour of hopping in between 64 player Conquest and 64 player Breakthrough. Got a couple games in of each, and I was actually able to feel like I did something, and that's something that I had not felt in 128 players in terms of how I play Battlefield. So it's really good to me to be able to hop in this game and legitimately enjoy it, because like I've been in this weird struggle with Battlefield recently where like 128 players is not what I want of this game, and it's been one of those things where like, okay, I'll hop on and play Battlefield, but I'm not gonna really enjoy it. But with this new update, like I feel like I've been enjoying it, and that's a great experience to have.
Yeah, and I think what you said about like feeling as though you're actually making an impact on the game, that's probably the biggest part that I've noticed, that if you do really well, it can actually help your team, whereas in 128 players, you could have the best game ever, and it kind of just feels like it doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of people are probably feeling, where it just feels like no matter what you do, it doesn't really affect the game, which in a way can have its benefits of like, it just balances it out a bit, and it makes it that the sweaty players aren't dominating as much, and the players who are not quite as good, they're not feeling as though they're not doing anything, because kind of everyone is just on that same level. But that's also, I think having that as the only mode was the problem, because if you want that experience now, you can still get it, but you can also get the experience where if you play really well, then you can actually help your team win. So I think that's probably the main thing for me, is that it just feels like you're actually helping the team rather than
Yeah.
just. I've had
You're
games
making
in
an impact.
Yeah, I've had games in the 128 player breakthrough where I'll be like on the front lines as Falk, reviving like literally 15 people within like a minute, and with a 32 player team, that's half the team that you've revived.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 128 players, that's like a tenth of the lobby, and it just you feel like you're doing so much, and then when you actually think about it, I didn't do anything, didn't help the team at all, because that's such a small amount of the player base that's actually being helped. So
yeah, it doesn't feel like there's any motivation to capture the objective either. Like for me personally, like when I'm playing 128 players Battlefield, like I'm just trying not to die. I don't care about the objective. I don't care about getting kills. I'm just honestly running around trying to hide from all of the vehicles and all of the snipers. Like that is my experience playing 128 players Battlefield. And then hopping into 64, it's like, okay, this is what I want. This is what I've been wanting. Hopping around, capturing the command post, like going through, capturing the points, making sure to defend the objective if you're in breakthrough, and like that, like you said, reviving people. I revived 7 people in the last game that I played a breakthrough, and like I felt like when I ended that live, I was like, yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a crazy difference, and it was something that I didn't really notice until the 64 player modes came out. I was kind of wondering, I was like, oh, why isn't everyone else liking 128 players? I'm loving it. And then now I've realized like that's probably a huge part of it, is that it doesn't really matter what you do. You can go 50 for 10 and you can have 30 revives, and you didn't do that much to actually impact the game. And that's, at the end of the day, that's one thing that everyone wants to do, is play well and help the team win. And if you can't do that, then that's probably a lot of the reason that people aren't really enjoying it.
Yeah. It's fascinating. So, question for you: we don't have Rush anymore, sadly. Rest in peace, Rush. I hope you come back. Do you think because of all the outcry around Rush and how people really love the 64 players 2042 Rush experience, is that why you think they added it?
I think early on in the game's lifespan, I think a lot of people were already making their voices heard about the whole 128 player issue, and I think that it's something DICE probably didn't want, because 128 players is kind of like a selling point in a way. It's like this big grand game mode, and then everyone's kind of like, no, we don't really want that so much. So
yeah,
I think they probably just, and look, I will say, even though because currently it's still a limited time mode, it's not permanent just yet, but I will say that it's really, really good that this is like now the second time they've listened, where they've said, firstly, they put in Rush and they listened that we really enjoyed it, and they kept it for an extra week. Now they've done this, and it does feel as though them doing that, it kind of is leading to maybe early next year, maybe season 1, for example, this stuff will get added permanently. Whether that happens or not, I'm not too sure, but it just feels as though they are at least willing to like listen to what we're saying, and if it's not in their initial plans, they still seem like they are actually going, all right, we didn't want to do that initially, but it's what everyone wants and it works well enough, so let's just do it. And so hopefully they just keep doing that, and I really do hope that this becomes a permanent thing, because as good as it is, even if they do like 2 weeks of 64 players and they do 2 weeks of Rush, that's still good, but it just not quite complete, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think to really win back the trust, it's not like this is going to win it completely, but to start start down that direction, they need to add this stuff permanently, just to show everyone that they are listening, and that if it's a big enough deal to us, they will actually implement it. So whether that happens or not, I'm not too sure, but I really do think they'd be dumb to not keep these permanent by sometime next year, and hopefully not in Portal. Hopefully how it is. I really like how it is now with the 64 player modes, where it's actually in All Out Warfare. It's not that hard to do. Surely they've just done it. So it's
they've opened the Pandora's box. We know they can do it.
Yeah. So I hope that because of how the community's reacted to this, and I haven't heard a single bad thing about Rush or 64-player Conquest and Breakthrough. Everyone on Twitter, everyone in the games and stuff are just saying this is so much better. It's not a pure fix for the game. The game still has issues, but the modes themselves, I haven't heard a bad thing. So I just think next year they need to make this and Rush permanent, and that'll be a really good start to the 2022.
Yeah, everything just seems so much more well balanced, where it's just like a free for all in the 128 player mode. I think this clearly crystallizes everything about the term "bigger isn't always better." They tried to go as big as possible. 128 player maps, the biggest maps, or 128 player game modes, the biggest maps in Battlefield history, and everyone's like, "Oh no, stop it!"
You could even tell that from like before the game came out. I was expecting. Now, weirdly enough, Breakaway is actually one of my favorite maps, but I was really not happy when they said how big that map was. I was kind of like, it's cool. I'm sure it'll look cool, but I don't want to play that map at all.
Yeah,
and
let's see. My favorite maps in all of the other games are the small ones. I don't think this is a good plan. Especially in terms of like DICE's history with map design not being very great. Just because you make a big map doesn't mean it suits the big style. You could probably cut each of these Battlefield 2042 maps in half and they still feel really big, just in terms of how everything's spread out. But yeah, I agree that they're doing a fantastic job with kind of listening to the community. I struggle with how they aren't really committing with anything. They're like, okay, we'll put in Rush and we'll keep it another week because I know you guys really like that. But it's like, no, we want you to keep it permanently. We don't want it for only another week. We want it there all the time. And it again with 64-player Conquest and Breakthrough, like they're like, oh yeah, it's a limited time only mode for the holidays. It's like, but why? You obviously have it in the game already, and you put it in there, and it's not going to affect anything if you keep on going with it. I don't see what their strategy is with that.
I think one thing that it's probably making it seem that way when it's maybe not that way is probably just because of like a lot of them are probably already on holidays. So I'd imagine that a lot of this stuff was planned before the game even launched, that they'd do Rush and then they'd do this and that. And I think that it's probably too hard now to fully implement the permanent modes, and they'd probably have this stuff on a schedule just the same way that, say, back in the Battlefront 2 days, they had like it would automatically kick in double XP, it would automatically kick in certain stuff. And then I think, once they start doing updates again and stuff, I think at that point, if they don't make it permanent, then I'll be a bit like, why? Like, what's your reason? But I think for now, I'm kind of just like, it's the holidays. I'm not expecting them to permanently change anything. So I think that thought process is definitely in like a month. I think that will be a fair enough concern, because it'll be like, what's the hold up? Like, why isn't this permanent? But I think for now, it's probably just the fact that these would have been implemented to be essentially like scheduled, and then there's probably just not enough people to, at the offices to actually like put that in there permanently within the next few weeks or so.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I would have my thinking is that it was one of those things where maybe they did have it in a schedule and they just pushed it early because they saw how many people liked 64-player Rush. But I don't know. It seems like a response to the community more than a pre-planned thing. But maybe you're right in that this was always part of the strategy. They were gonna kind of have this thing for people to play throughout the holiday season, and now people are like, "Oh, hey, I can actually play this on my PC now. Maybe you shouldn't decide to keep it permanently." I would be very fascinated to see if they do keep it permanently. We'll never see this, but they'll definitely see this. The percentage of people that actually decide to play 64 versus 128. I think that would be, we'll never see it, but it would be fascinating to know.
Yeah, I would really, really like to know that. Same with Rush when that was out. I actually felt like I know because it's smaller, it was only 32 player lobby, so it's obviously quicker to find games. But I feel as though I was finding games instantly compared to in the bigger modes. Sometimes early on in the day, anyway, like during peak time, you can find a game instantly, regardless. But say at like 8 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing a stream, rush was just instant. It felt like the lobbies were really pumping, and I think that was it's something like you said, we'll never see it. They'll never share that data, but it would be really interesting to see just the actual percentage, because like the other side of it too is we always think that all of us who are involved in the community are like the majority, but it could be one of those things too where the casual players might just be like, oh, why would I play with half? I'm just going to play the big mode. You know what I mean? So it'd actually be really interesting to see whether it is. I feel like it would be way more popular than 128 players, but it could be the opposite where, the casual player base is like, nah, why would I go back to the old way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think if you're a PC player and you have not tried 64-player Conquest, hop in there right away, because just the performance level of what you'll be getting with that mode is so much better than the previous, than the 128 players. So highly recommended from me. Like, I have struggled with how well the game performs so much to the point where I'm like, do I just like take apart my PC and reset everything and try it again? Because I've got a beefy PC and I'm still having struggles. But most of those struggles are gone with 64 players. So it's just a much better experience all around.
And I think that also could be a bit of an explanation to why the performance issues are so bad, because they ramped up the scale when maybe our machines weren't quite ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that's something that it kind of makes sense when there's so many vehicles and explosions and stuff going on. That's probably makes sense that the performance has been so shit. So it's, I think for me that's also a huge part of it, is that if it's going to take you months, like I've had, my performance has been fine. Like I haven't really had any issues, but if you're going to take 6 months to fix that, right? You need to keep 64 players in until that's done. If you remove it afterwards, which that would still be stupid, but if they do it afterwards, whatever. But it's kind of a temporary fix right now for the performance, and that's kind of another part of it. Not only is it more balanced and it just is generally more enjoyable, but it is also partly fixing your game for you. So I think they kind of need to just keep it in there just for that alone, even if it wasn't playing, if it wasn't more balanced or more enjoyed. For the people who are struggling to get 30 frames a second, they probably need it to actually physically play the game. So
exactly.
yeah, I think it's very important that they've done the first step, they've put it in there, and they've listened, and that's absolutely fantastic. Credit to them, but they need to follow that up. Otherwise, it'll be hell if they remove this. The community, that could be the last straw for so many people if it hasn't been already. But a lot of people who are kind of hanging on the edge there, removing that could be. I don't even want to think about the freaking drama on Twitter if that happens.
I mean, if Tom Henderson is to be believed, I mean he's had a pretty good track record in terms of his contact, his leaks, his contacts, all that fun stuff. If there is a 70% drop in terms of the player base, I mean the majority of people that are keeping going are the super hardcore fans that want another Battlefield experience, that are gonna S level, go all the way to the max level, and keep on playing this game no matter what. And it's now the core player base that's going to keep your game alive in terms of people playing it. It's just a terrible decision to make that decision if they do get rid of it. So we'll see after the holidays. Again, they are on break until the 1st of January, middle of January. They'll be back in the studio, and hopefully with some great insight, good refresh. So on this kind of similar discussion, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about some Portal. Yeah, you have been mainly playing some of the pre-made stuff with dice, as well as Rush. That was technically a Portal game mode, but Portal has been one of those things that I don't. Again, we've talked about this previously in the podcast, but I don't know if it necessarily shocked or made such an impact on the world as they were maybe expecting when it first was announced. Yeah. But just from like a playing perspective, most of the stuff that I've played for it were great. Before hopping on the podcast, I hopped into Gunmaster, hopping into Call of Duty lingo for a little bit there. Battlefield fans hate it when I do that. Basically the same thing. But Gunmaster, every 2 lives you switch a weapon. Oh, dude, it's so good. I'd forgotten about how much I love that game mode. Like, it's such a fun thing, and for me, like, it keeps me on my toes. It makes me really proficient in most of the weapons, because you have to be good to progress, making me a lot quicker with my reflexes, because spawns are random. You will respawn next to someone who is your enemy, so it's so great to see that kind of come back into a sense. I wish, I mean, we've talked about this in the past. I wish there was more kind of discoverability or persistent servers, because if someone made a specific version of Gunmaster, like in Battlefield 4, I hate it when it switches between pistols and shotguns, which seem like the only ones available. I wanted to go through the full gamut, but let's just say there is only one person. They specifically are monsters and decide they love that version of Gunmaster. You either have to hop on and create your own, wait for it to be filled, or turn on AI and wait for AI to hop on and do all of the hoops that requires. So I wish they would adjust that.
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on this, I think, in the last one, or it might have been the one before that, but it's, like we said, it's the idea behind Portal is the most crazy thing I've ever seen in a game, to be honest, in terms of just like the features that it can, give everyone. But like you just said, you kind of have to jump through hoops, and that shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't have to like work to get a game. I don't want to sit there for if I've got an hour to play, right, on a Friday afternoon, I've been working all week, I don't want to sit there for half of that time waiting for it to fill, and then it fills up and I get one game and I'm like, I gotta get off now. Like, that's just I don't know why they thought that would work, and I also don't know why we all didn't pick up on that earlier, to be honest. Hindsight's 2020, I guess, but thinking back now, I don't know how we didn't all go like, oh, that sounds pretty bad, that you have to sit there.
Probably for the same reason the developers didn't figure out that was bad. We hadn't played it yet. Again, we've had this discussion throughout the podcast about how developers play the game and how QA testers play the game versus how the community actually plays the game. And those are very different things, as we've seen in Battlefield. And I even Tom Henderson said that the game was originally tested with 60 to 70 players. So it kind of makes sense that 64 players work so well, because that's how many people usually hopped on a game to test it in the first place. So they had 60 or 70 people, the rest were AI. So I think that's very kind of indicative of what was going on there.
Yeah, and I also think, now that you say that too, like, it probably didn't seem an issue that you have to wait for a lobby to fill, because they would have been doing playtests every day, and the person would set up the server, and then everyone was ready because they had the time set to jump on. So, like, in their eyes, the lobby filled up so quick, this is perfect. But that's not how real life works. And not everyone, I mean, in communities, obviously, if you and I said, let's get both our communities together and let's plan a day and let's set up a server, we'd get that full, or, to like 30 or 50 people in like 5 minutes. But that's not how it works.
Stay tuned, because we may be doing that at some point.
That would be a blast. That'd be an absolute blast. But yeah, like, if it's planned out like they do it, it's obviously going to work. But I'm not, even us, we have like platforms with our channels and stuff. Even we can't just whip up a freaking 50 player lobby on the spot. That's not really how it works. So I guess that kind of makes sense why they maybe thought it was going to work, because like you said, they're testing. They do play the game every day, but they don't play it in the same way that you casually play a shooter. Like it's just not quite the same. So I guess that kind of makes sense why things didn't go quite as planned.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I've been greatly enjoying some of the different stuff that you can play in Portal. I'm going to be honest here. I have not played it to the level that I thought I would when the game when it was first announced. But I have been greatly enjoying some of the stuff that I've been hopping on. Most of the DICE kind of selected modes have been fantastic. I've played most of them. The one that is currently on for the holiday season is this elf mode where you spawn in as elves and you're supposed to kind of kill the other people who have actual weapons. You have a candy cane, so it's melee versus actual weaponed individuals. And as you go through this mode, you're supposed to have teams that switch. So you'll take turns, kind of like Ewok Hunt. If you ever play Battlefront 2, basically the elves are the Ewoks. They can see everything. They have higher speed, but they are limited in terms of how much damage they can deal because it's a melee candy cane versus people that spawn in with weapons, and you're supposed to avoid these elves. That's how it's in theory supposed to work, but as I found out today, it does not work that way. In fact, it doesn't even work at all. In all of the games, I tried 4 different lobbies, and all of them had the same issue where even from the beginning, it didn't select the individuals that you're supposed to kill, and we were all just hopping around very fast with candy canes in our hands, ready to kill someone, but we never had anybody to kill.
I saw, I think it was Lossy maybe that posted something on Twitter about that, and I didn't, until you explained it before we started recording, I didn't know what was wrong. I thought the game just didn't end, but now that sounds even worse. That everyone is just already
it never begins,
and there's no actual there's nothing to do in the mode. It's definitely a bit odd.
Mm-hmm. So really fun idea, and I was really pumped when I saw it there. And on all of the characters, you're either a Santa masked person, which looks terrifying, or you're an elf masked person who looks terrifying. Great idea, great kind of aesthetic for the whole thing. It's a fantastic idea and well executed. It's well executed, but also not well executed because you can't really play it.
It's well executed apart from the fact of it doesn't work.
Yeah. Great idea. Terrible execution. But that's what I love about Portal is it offers these experiences that I never would have thought about that. There are definitely some weird bugs because I was playing hardcore gun games, so the map wasn't pulled up instead of the map just not being there. It was just grayed out, which I would have rather had the more space on the screen and be able to kind of take off that aspect of the UI completely, but that wasn't a thing that you're able to do. You can't really adjust the AI, or the UI, not AI, but you can't adjust the UI at all, which is disappointing. I was talking with Dinko. We were talking together. We were playing Battlefield 1942 Classic, and we'd get so immersed into it, and then we'd look at our weapons in the UI and be like, it's still there.
Yeah, that's one thing about. I remember when we were playing in the early access, we played 1942 Conquest, and it played so well. It was so fun, but every time you look at your HUD to see to check your ammo, and it's this neon green freaking UI, it just feels so weird.
Because everything else is so accurate to the game and the time zone. That is what I wish Battlefield 5 was.
100%.
But the UI is just oh, nope, never mind. It's still 1942. I just got a time machine, was able to go back in time and use the weapons there.
Yeah, it's something. Hopefully, they can fix that in the future because, surely that's not actually too hard of a fix to.
I hope so. Even if it's black and white,
the UI just something, just make it really bare bones. It shouldn't need to be some spectacular.
Get rid of all color. Work it with the transparency. I think it'd be great.
A lot of the old, say the older Call of Duty games, their UI was just white text on your screen, and that's kind of all it needs. If you just see your ammo count and the stuff that you need to see, I don't think it needs to be. They don't need to make it the best looking UI as long as it shows everything you need,
be,
and it's not like weird looking, then I think it does the job.
Yeah. What would be incredible is if they had a classic mode for, like, if you are playing 1942, you use like an up-res version of the original UI. That would obviously be a lot more time consuming to implement. But it would be great if it was that classic version where it looked like 1942. If you're playing Bad Company 2, it's the similar design style of Bad Company 2. If you're in Battlefield 3, the same way there. Like, it'd be individually tailored to that experience versus what it is now. Just a jack of all trades, master of none, all that fun stuff. So that's just a little gripe that I have. Something that I noticed, it'd been about a week since I played Battlefield, been super busy prepping for the holidays, and just accepted a new job, so which will be starting in January. So I'm getting stuff prepped for that. So I didn't have enough time. I couldn't find time to play Battlefield for a week, and I had forgotten how much I hate vehicles. Today I wrote in my notes, because I was prepping notes in terms of like what I was seeing, what I was experiencing, especially after the update. This is what I wrote. I hate vehicles so much, and that will never change. Even
I'm
like
right there with you, man.
even 64 player total 32v32, while it is better, I still find it incredibly frustrating as someone who prefers to play infantry, and that is what I play Battlefield for. I know not everyone plays that way, and maybe even the majority of Battlefield fans enjoy the Battlefield vehicle play. More power to you, whatever you enjoy, but it just takes me out of the experience so much, and there's nothing you can really do against a helicopter that goes down and rains fire on you. Like, I'm fine. Tanks are a little bit easier to deal with, but what they've got with the helicopters is it's so frustrating.
Yeah, that's actually kind of what I was getting at earlier with a few tweaks that they still need to make to the 64 player modes. I don't know if they've reduced the amount of vehicles despite reducing the
I was wondering that too. I could not tell, honestly.
Yeah, I haven't like looked into it enough. I played for a few hours yesterday, but because I don't play vehicles, I don't know how many. I don't even know how many are allowed on the map.
I very rarely press that gear icon next to the spawn point.
So I don't know if they have reduced it, and if they have, in my opinion, they haven't reduced it enough. It felt like
I assumed it, but now that you say that, like,
vehicles,
I have no idea.
Yeah, I assumed they had as well, because I thought they'll just half everything. They're half the player base. They'll half the freaking vehicles as well. And I don't know if they have, because it felt like I was playing a game on, I think, Manifest, playing Breakthrough.
Yeah,
and
that was
I
literally my exact experience.
I swear I had just unlocked that last sniper, the NTW, so I was trying to use that a little bit, and I was sitting up on, like, not on the top of those cranes, but like in that middle section where there's like a little railing, and I was just trying to pick off a few enemies, and literally every because that thing can, like, deal a fair amount of damage to vehicles, so I was shooting at vehicles too, and I realized that, like, more than half of the people I was shooting at were actually vehicles. Like, I couldn't even see players. I just saw tanks and running around, and there was one part where I feel like there was maybe 4 tanks, and there was definitely choppers as well. So 4 tanks and 2 choppers on each team. That is 12 vehicles out of 64 players. That to me is way too much. That's way too many vehicles. Because of any vehicle, even the worst vehicle that can, obviously transport vehicles, maybe not, but any vehicle that can, like, deal damage, it is probably the equivalent of like 5 infantry. So if you've got essentially the same ratio, say there's 1 in 6 players can play as a vehicle, well, those vehicles are just going to dominate every single player. Like, you're just not going to lose if you're in a vehicle. So I do get, like, I'm all for there being vehicles, because it is a big part of Battlefield, and I do like that it adds kind of a bit of a fear factor. It's almost like, oh, there's a tank, we've got to get out of there. Like, I kind of like that aspect, but when you cannot get away from them, that's an issue. And if I'm no matter where I am on the map, running into vehicles and I cannot do anything against them. That's a real issue for me. So that's one thing that I think they need to turn it down. I don't think they need to half it maybe, but like reduce it by 25% or something like that. I'm not sure what actual values, but they definitely need to tone it down a bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I was on Manifest Breakthrough, 64 players, and I literally closed the doors on a storage container so I could survive the 3 tanks that were all around me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably going to play again later today, so maybe I'll look into it and actually check out the, like, I just don't know how many vehicles you can even have in the regular Conquest, because I just don't play vehicles. I've never looked at, there are 8 out of 8 vehicles. I don't know how many there are, but I'll probably check on both modes and actually see, because it just definitely felt like, in fact, it almost felt like I was dying more to vehicles because the ratio felt higher.
Yeah.
So there were less people to kill for me and more vehicle, or the same amount of vehicles that were trying to kill me still.
Yeah, it definitely feels definitely not balanced. Would be hilarious if they actually did half it and we're still complaining about it.
If they did half it, then
they need to do it again.
Find a new game, to be honest. Because, oh my god, it was yeah. I don't know if it was maybe just I'm not used to the choppers, because the last few Battlefield games haven't had choppers. Maybe I'm not used to the choppers in a 64 player mode. But man, it was, I noticed it straight away. That was like the only real thing I had an issue with was the vehicles, and it was still more enjoyable than 128 players, because at least like there's not as much chaos still. But that was pretty much my only gripe with the mode, was that I reckon still every second death I was getting was a vehicle, which is just not fun. If I die to a trooper, I generally go, all right, fair enough, you were better than me. But if I died to a vehicle, most of the time I just kind of go, I don't know if you were better than me. You just had a better thing than I do. Like, I'm a person and you're a vehicle, so obviously you're gonna beat me. And it just kind of gets frustrating.
Yeah, I've also been running into the issue with hit reg. Like, hit register is so bad right now. I don't know what, like, I feel. So I was playing 64 player Conquest and Breakthrough, and like I was playing, and it seemed like these people were like one-shotting me, but I'd look and it wasn't a headshot, and I was like, there's got to be something wrong here. And this dude and I saw him, and I know I started shooting first, and by the time that we were done with the fight, I was dead and he was still 100% health.
Yeah, I've had that a few times as well, and it could just, like, it's always hard for me because my Australian internet's so that it's like, I just, half the time I'm like, someone's on Netflix and now my whole game's ruined pretty much. But like, there are actually times when, like, I'll be home, no one's on the internet, I know for a fact there's nothing downloading, everything should be working fine, and that still happens. And because there's been a few server issues lately, they've had, like, I've seen the direct communications account like tweeting saying, we hear that people are having trouble logging on and stuff. That makes me think that maybe it's just like some server issue where certain people are getting a higher ping than they should be, or I don't know. But I've definitely noticed that a few times as well. Not too many times, but there's been a few times when I'll shoot at someone first. No, it's not like I'm missing shots and they kill me faster, and sometimes we're using the same weapon, and unless they land a headshot in the middle and then it's not a headshot to kill me, and it doesn't say that it's a headshot, but maybe there was. I don't know, but I feel that too. Sometimes I'm just dying and I'm like, what the hell? Like, I thought I played better than you in that gunfight, but clearly not.
It's one of those things, is like, is this intentional? Is this a bug? Is it just server? With an EA base game, it could be any of them. But like it's so weird. I also ran into this bug where I got revived and I could not shoot for 20 seconds until someone started shooting me, and then I could shoot. This happened consecutively. I mean, I was not revived as many times as I probably should have, considering how many teammates were around me. But the 3 times that I was revived, it happened each time. So I don't know what was going on there.
That's weird. I haven't run into that one yet, but that definitely does not sound like an enjoyable bug.
Yeah, but like it's just one of those things. It's like now that we've got like, oh hey, this game flows a lot better now with 64 players. You can start to see the potential available. Like, oh, this is what this game kind of looks like and feels like without server issues and like without performance issues, and you can get reasonable frame rates. And you're like, this is actually pretty good. Wow.
Yeah. That's the thing that when they implemented Rush, that was the first thing I said was like, this feels like what this game should be. It felt like the smoother, more balanced mode that I can actually see myself, really, really loving. And I've been really enjoying 128 plays, but it is a lot of just like chaos and there's performance issues and it is a bit like unstable. Whereas these modes definitely feel like they kind of feel like this is how they're intended to be played, and that's something that I just kind of want in the game. Is that it's the vision that they have for the game is actually coming through in the game, because in 128 players, like a lot of people have said, it does feel like it's kind of lost its identity a little bit. But
yeah,
I can feel the battlefield in there when I play Rush. I can go, okay, I hear the MCOM going off, and the gunplay and the movement all feels nice. This is Battlefield. Whereas 128 players, it just feels like Chaos Simulator, which is still fun, but it's not. It just doesn't feel quite as much like Battlefield. So it is good to see that potential in there, and I've also noticed like the weekly challenges and stuff. Like having something there in the game, it's a small thing. It's a skin that I probably will never use each week, but having something like having the 64 play modes, which is more enjoyable than having like, oh, I better get my weekly challenges done. It's actually starting to come together a bit more for me. So I think once we get into like season 1 and there's a battle pass and the weekly challenges and, new weapons and stuff on top of hopefully permanent 64 player and Rush and stuff like that, I think it will be heading really in the right direction. And I just hope that they stick to what they're doing, because I think they've done, say what you will a bit like about the launch of the game, but I think since then they've pretty much not really done anything wrong. They've all the changes they've made have been good, and I just hope that we're starting to see that potential, and I hope they just keep doing that. Really.
I hope the devs stay humble on their vacations.
Yeah.
I know you may be going to Hawaii, but stay focused. So we're coming up on the Christmas season. It's a lot closer than I would like to admit. What are some of the things that you expect to see? Do you expect to see there being a big surge with people getting the game for Christmas, or do you think there's still that kind of reservation on the game?
That's a tough one, because there'll definitely be like a lot of new players, because that just always, there would have been people who
they bought it.
We're definitely going to get it.
Launched.
Yeah, exactly. They would have been definitely getting it, and then like they would have just said, "Oh, we'll get it for the kids for Christmas instead of now." So there'll definitely still be an increase in the play count, but I don't think it's going to be like some drastic increase. I think that they still have a lot of work to do, and I think this is going to be like a year-long thing where the middle of next year and like, September, October, that will be when the game has a full resurgence. And I think that in our the creative council chat that we have with all the other boys, we were talking the other day about Battlefront 2, and I went back and watched all the Battlefront 2 trailers. The Geonosis trailer for me is so like important to that game, because that was the moment that all the people who gave up on it straight away, and rightly so, it had the pay to win stuff, people giving up on it was fair enough.
Yeah.
But all those people went, oh, this is not the game it was at launch. Look how awesome this looks. Yeah. And that was when the game turned. And from there onwards, it was pretty much, it still had issues and it still had bits of drama and stuff like that, but it was a really, really good live service after that. And I think that's something that they need to do with Battlefield is they need to. That was almost a relaunch. They got it to where it should be, and then they marketed it again. And I think that they're going to have to do the same with this game. I don't think they can win the trust back just by patching it. I think they need to.
Yeah.
There's been the rumors of a battle royale and stuff. They need to have some big thing to show off with a massive trailer and have the game in a good state that when you get a bunch of people in the door, then that's when that kind of the trust, can be brought back and people go, oh, okay, like I'm going to try the battle royale. I didn't really like it last year, but this trailer looked awesome and I'm going to play it. And then if it's in a good state, that's when you can win them back. But yeah, I think that's still a while away. I think they've got a lot of work to do. And even though I'm enjoying the game, it doesn't change the fact that, for a lot of people, they have every right to be disappointed in how it's gone. And I think they got their work cut out for them for sure.
Yeah, it's going to take a huge... They need to fix the game and get it to a point where I can go into an elevator and still and actually go up the elevator instead of what happened today where I got bugged and couldn't move and had to redeploy. They need to get to the point where it has a scoreboard, it has a leaderboard, it has the core features that it should have. It's very consistent, it performs well, and then they need to reinvest in marketing this game because again, it is in the spot that Battlefront 2 was. I think it's an apt comparison. We had a very hyped game where they made big promises and they underdelivered, and we got an experience that was not as was expected or even promoted. And hopefully it doesn't take as long as it did for them to fix Battlefront 2, and we don't lose 6 to 8 months of kind of content and support. And I think one of the biggest parts of that will be that first season. What is going to be in this first season? Because we still don't know. We just know that there will be a season. We don't know what it's going to entail, what kind of missions or anything like that. And we need to see what that strategy looks like from them, because they do have a lot of... they lost a crap ton of trust with Battlefield 5. They regained it a little bit with the trailers and the promise of a new Battlefield 4, and then they disappointed everybody, lost so much trust again. Like, they have to rebuild it, and it's going to take an effort that is basically relaunching the game, honestly.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, like you said, they need to get the game to the state that it should be in, and then, like, they can't try and push this game out and do big trailers in the current state that it's in. That will just not fix anything. They need to get it to the point exactly like Battlefront 2. I honestly see so many similarities between these two games, not for the same reasons, but they launched so bad, and then I do think this game will turn around, hopefully, provided they stick with it. And from all the announcements a few weeks back, it sounds like they definitely will. It needs to do what Battlefront 2 did, where they redid the progression. I remember the update before we got Grievous, which Grievous and Obi-Wan, they were like, that was like the relaunch of the game.
Yeah.
But the one before that, they finally implemented the squad spawn system, and that was like, at that point, it was like, now this feels like a full game. And then they marketed it afterwards, and that's what this needs to have as well. They need to put in the server browser and the scoreboard and get all the bugs out and optimize it and get it to the point where we all go, this is what they were going for.
Yeah.
And then they need to remarket the game. And if they do that, I have no doubt it will do really well, but it's just a matter of whether they can do all that within, they can't take 2 years to do that because the next freaking game will be coming out. So they need to do it as quick as they can. And it's going to be a lot of hard work, but if they're so dedicated to this franchise like they keep saying they are, then it's something they need to do.
It has to be shown with this game. It cannot be a future game, because by the time a future game comes out, you've lost everybody.
Yeah, this was meant to be, after the last game, this was meant to be like, look, we messed up and here's the game for the fans. And it hasn't been that. And they can't make the game for the fans and that be a failure. And then the next game they go, nah, this is the one for the fans. They can't do that. They need to...
Guys, we fixed it. This is the one for all of you. We kept you in mind.
So, yeah, I couldn't agree more that I think they need to just double down on this game. And I honestly, I don't think they should even be thinking about the next game. They need to just get this game to where it needs to be.
That's what gets me so frustrated is the fact that DICE consistently, as soon as Battlefront 2 was officially launched, they moved most of the team to another project. No, stop it. Show your dedication to this franchise by keeping the entire team on to focus on it. Don't just say, oh, we have a live team working on it. No, that does not show dedication. You just showed that you pitched another Battlefront game, and you know how you did the fans dirty with the previous Battlefront game. Like, you know that you left that game in a terrible taste in everyone's mouth in terms of how the cancellation of both Battlefront 2 and Battlefield 5 went. You can't show your dedication and still make those decisions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think they just need to... I'm okay with them like planning for the next one in terms of like what settings are going to be, what's the story, blah blah blah. That's fine, but don't start developing your next game already. I don't care about your next game. And this is coming from me, I'm super positive about this game. I've played it literally like every day. I'm not one of the people who's hating it. I'm absolutely loving 2042, but even I am saying like you need to win everyone back with this one, not the next one. You just can't keep doing that. They need to pretty much say, they should just about come out to us and say, we're not going to start developing the next game until this one is a game that you guys all love. And that would then be like, okay, maybe it still takes a year to get to that point, but they're really committing to it, because it just does feel like even if they say they commit to the franchise, they're just committing to the next one that's going to make them billions more dollars. So it still seems like it's all about the money, not about committing to the actual enjoyment of the play base. Like, it doesn't matter. I can commit to making as much money as I want to, if you want me to say that. Like, everyone's doing that. It's literally the point of working. So I think that they really need to get this game right, and this needs to, it needs to be, by the end of the lifespan, it needs to be, damn, what a game that was. Now I'm keen for the next one, because you're just never going to win the player base back by getting this, to a decent spot and then releasing a new game. That just won't work.
Yeah. Like, honestly, what would be awesome if they have the live, like, this is never going to happen because DICE is not the company that does these kinds of things, and EA is not the company that would fund this kind of thing. But in terms of like Destiny, they completely redid their game and relaunched it as something else. Rainbow Six Siege, honestly, it's a much smaller game for sure, but it's been supported for much longer. And they did a 2.0 version, basically. They had a rough launch. Fans were not happy, but they said, you know what, we're going to keep putting in the work, and we're going to redo this thing. They had a complete redesign and restructure of the entire game. That is what Battlefield needs. They need to have this game currently fixing all the bugs, but in the background, they should have the same team go back to a previous build and say, okay, what are the fans talking about right now? Let's put in the effort and get this going and relaunch it as Battlefield 2042 2.0.
Well, that's the thing that this is, maybe this sounds like a dumb theory or a dumb idea. In 2 to 3 years, release it as Battlefield 2043 and have it like following up, and have a campaign to like, this is the story. So 2042 has happened, and now this is the story that is happening in 2043 after the war has broke out and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, Irish is dead.
And essentially relaunch the game on the go. It can be on the same engine and all that kind of thing, but it's been done, and a lot of people might go, oh, we don't want the same game multiple years in a row, but I'd be fine with that, and release your little spin-off games and stuff on the side, that's fine, but I would be so keen on a 5-year live service. They've got the Battle Pass stuff in there. They don't need to keep selling the game. They can sell products. They don't need to relaunch one every couple of years just to, make their sales.
Yeah.
You've got that stuff in the game now with the Battle Pass and cosmetics and all that
They've
kind
shown
of thing. Just
they
keep
want
it
to
going.
do that too. Like every single decision that is crap about Battlefield 2042 was made because another game did it and they wanted to copy it in a rough, lack of effort almost way. But I love the idea that, I mean, we haven't seen this since Battlefield 3 and 4, where it was a continuation of that same storyline in a similar time zone. Like, they went from Battlefield 4 to Battlefield 1 to Battlefield 5, and then they went to Battlefield 2042. I would love to see a continuation because, I mean, if they really dedicated themselves to this era, they can do some fantastic things. Okay, we had this was the beginning of the No-Pat War, and now we're in the next phase. Yeah. Battlefield 1943 or whatever somewhat close year to that. Don't make another huge time jump. Dedicate this area and say, okay, we just because of the passing of Irish's actor, Irish is dead. Some of the biggest proponents of the No-Pat War are gone, and there is a new fight that is taking our, I would say iconic, but they aren't really iconic, heroes into the battlefield once again, and they're called, instead of like this weird No-Pat War, why are the No-Pats fighting each other? They should be fighting the governments because the governments are what really screwed them. Like, really dedicate some time in explaining that. But I love the idea of like adding to the foundations of this game and saying the world has gone to even more crap. Like everything has hit the fan, and just a little bit of it happened before, but now buildings are crumbling. The entire economy's down. Like, dedicate yourselves to this story and don't make another, don't make the Battlefield 2043 that all of these specialists believe that they're in. This is great time to be alive.
Yeah. That and that's another part of it that would work really well, is that can be their way to essentially rebrand their, like, the identity of the game, because it's sold itself as like, this is hell, like this is the war to end all wars, and then we've got all this weird voice lines at the end of the game. Like, they could do that as a way of, like, you know, it still can be the same game, like we saw with Rainbow Six. It's still technically the same game, but it's been relaunched almost the same way as the Celebration Edition for Battlefield.
Yeah.
It was the same game, but it just kind of like got a new skin over the top of it. And do that with this game. It doesn't need to be an actual new iteration of the game, but just relaunch it and change those things about it that people don't like. Change the, you know, the voice lines and certain elements of the setting and stuff like that. And that's a way that they can change the tone of the game without having to just randomly change it, and everyone will be like, what the hell? Why wasn't this at the start? They can kind of make those characters. They've been at war for a year now. Oh, now this isn't a great time to be alive. I'm kind of sick of it now. Like,
actually, no.
Yeah.
Angel becomes just so much less happy about life.
Everyone's just like, all the voice lines are just like, please kill me. I'm so sick of this.
Well, I made it through this fight.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what we were expecting too. Is like, why are all these people so freaking happy, dude? You literally have no home. You don't even exist as a member of this government now. Like, you should be a lot less happy about killing your fellow no-pats who are all on the same page in terms of they were ostracized from their government and won't be let back into the working society. Like, I think you'd be a little less happy about that, honestly.
And actually, just thinking about that now as well, I've heard, I think it was Flack made a video. I don't know if you watched it, but it was like what he thinks needs to change for the game moving forward. And he mentioned about, which is something we kind of all talked about at the start, was having the specialists kind of split onto two teams, which I don't know about how that would work for balancing, but having, say, Maria Falk, she is fighting only for the US team, so you can't play her when you're playing for the Russians and stuff like that. And once you have enough specialists, I think if there's 30 specialists, then they can do that, and they have 15 on each team. Obviously, that's a drastic number that I doubt it will ever get to that point, but you kind of get what I'm saying. And in the relaunch of if they were to do that and do Battlefield 2043, do it so that like that's part of the story of like why Maria chose to fight for America or whatever, and have that
make the characters choose. Like just have a storyline in between the decisions that they make, so they may change how a mechanic works, but implement that into the story of it. That would be so cool.
Yeah, because that's something that we see, and it doesn't really impact Apex, but we see it in Apex where they release the trailers for the new characters, and there's like a story in it. And
even just the map design,
like characters and stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so many things they can do there that. Again, there's probably just it will never happen, probably, but
like a living game.
Yeah, and that's I really wish that they would go down that way of doing a long live service and getting the game right, because it almost feels like they always launch poorly, then they get to where we all wanted them to be finally, and then they're like, oh, now it's time for the next one, and it's like we just started liking this one. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So, it's something that's kind of frustrating. But
whether you love it or hate it, Fortnite has done this probably one of, if not the best in the industry. I booted up Fortnite. My brother was hopping back in and wanted... There's a whole backstory there, but he wanted to hop on, and he was playing on my... when we were living together, he had an account that was linked to my Xbox account. We were trying to see if he could transfer it over to his account. Didn't end up working, whatever. But I hopped on, and like the opening cinematic for the first time when you boot it up for the new season, like it tells a story. It sets up the whole map, and throughout the whole season, with each update, they adjust things with the map itself, and that influences the story, teases things. What if like randomly you opened up Battlefield 2042 and the big building on Orbital was destroyed? Like, could you imagine?
Yeah.
That moment is destroyed. There's wreckage of the rocket ship that they're making there, or maybe the rocket ship that blows up, like crashes into the orbital big skyscraper. Like,
even
that
like,
would be huge.
One thing that I've seen is obviously, and I would agree with it. Everyone's saying that a lot of the maps have like areas that are too open. Do an update where part of the story is that all the satellites that are crashing to the ground in Hazard Zone, they crash all over the map, and they have like debris put all over the place where they need to add cover. Yeah, it's a way they can actually update the maps and fix some issues, while also like that would just be sick to just be like, oh, there's a reason why this piece of cover's here, because the satellite crashed down and all the debris went all over the map, and now not only does the map play better, but it's just a cool bit of lore that like. That's the type of stuff. It's they've done it in Warzone with certain things, like even speaking of Fortnite, they did that with, I think it was called Tilted Towers in the original map, and that just like blew up. Like doing stuff like that is such an awesome element, and we've only really seen that in Battle Royales. I don't think we've seen that in a multiplayer game where it's like the maps change and stuff, and that would be an awesome way to just change things up and fix certain elements of certain maps that people don't like and stuff like that. Be an amazing way of doing it.
I'd love it. I'd love it so much for that kind of game to be Battlefield 2042. Like, it'd be fantastic to see that kind of investment into the game that we have not seen before. And like, I'd never even, before you started this conversation, I would never have even thought about this. Because, like, I hate to say it, but DICE is an outdated development company. Like they aren't making the decisions that current games are making, or where the industry is going, and they always seem to be following the coattails of other more interesting games.
They do the stuff that everyone else is doing, but they're not pushing the envelope. They're not doing that. They're just doing what's been done. The specialists and the battle pass and all these things. I know what you mean. They're like trying to follow, but they're 2 years behind everyone. Like they're doing stuff that Warzone and Apex did when they launched, and it's just like, they really have the potential because they've always been that company that does some, the Levolution and the airships and the tornadoes, and they always push boundaries in certain ways, but they don't do it in a lot of the ways that Like, I'd give up the tornado in a heartbeat for some of this stuff because,
Yeah.
as cool as a tornado is, it doesn't really do anything. You know
Well,
what I mean?
I
It's
think,
kind of like a pointless thing for them to
yeah.
break ground on at the end of the day.
I've been going back and watching the tech demo that they posted about the announcement that they're working on another Battlefield game, and just the example that they had of that building crumbling. Like, and honestly, they made the decision. According to Tom Henderson, they had the opportunity to either go with Levolution and Destruction or 128 players, and they went with 128 players instead of that Levolution. And honestly, I think it was the wrong decision.
100%.
What's the quote? Aim where the ball is going, not where it's been. And
Yeah.
I think DICE is definitely going where it's been, not where it could be.
Yeah, and it is frustrating because they've always been that company that in the past they've always, Battlefield 4 with the Levolution and stuff, that was like groundbreaking stuff.
It still hasn't really been done to this day.
Yeah, Call of Duty still hasn't done anything like that. They haven't got the power to do that type of stuff, and Battlefield does have that power, but they seem to spend it in the wrong areas a lot of the time, and I think that's where a lot of people's frustration comes from with the franchise. Like, it's got so much potential in it, and they kind of just put it in the wrong places sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I ultimately hope that they do make the decision and it ends up going well, and that they do get to the point that the future Battlefield games are that kind of investment. But it's just a shame that we're in the mindset with them, like, oh well, this game will eventually be good. By the time it gets good, it'll probably be canceled and they'll work on the next game. And
Yeah.
Wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. It is sad to think because that, like, 99% chance that's what happens. This game will turn. I have no doubt in my mind this game will turn around and it will be one of those games that we look back in 10 years and go, damn, that was a sick game. And by the time it's at that point, the next game will be out. And it's very predictable and it's very frustrating because they just keep doing it and they need to learn from their mistakes, and it doesn't seem like they really haven't. The thing that gives me a lot of hope is that with the people they brought on, with Sam Pella and stuff like that is now, there is actually a reason that they could change now, because having people like that on board, it's like, okay, now it's not the same people making these decisions. Vince isn't the type of guy who is going to take from EA.
He's got a backbone.
They'll say, no, you need to release a game in 2 to 3 years, and he might straight up say to them, no, like, this is a long live service game, and I don't care what you say, I'm doing it. So I don't think they can. The thing
this
with
is
EA,
why you brought me on here.
Yeah, he is essentially, in all of Battlefield, he is now the most powerful person, even essentially above EA, because they put him in that position. And he can just say, well, I'm going back to Apex. If you don't want to listen to what I want to say, I'm done. And then that's a huge loss for them. So, in my opinion, he is the most powerful person in Battlefield. And that's perfect, because he's the man that they need to have on board.
Definitely one of the most. I honestly, like, he can not even say I'm going back to Apex. He could say I'm going to Call of Duty. Like, honestly, he's got that much power and influence in the game industry. Like, he could be like, you know what, you can either listen to me and I can make you a fantastic game that people love, or I can go to your competitors and make them a fantastic game. It's all up to you. I don't care either way.
I'm getting paid regardless. It's up to you where I get paid from and which game I make billions of dollars. So that's the good thing about him being on board, because I don't know if anyone else really had the balls to do that. And he's the only person that I've ever heard that has just straight up stood up to EA, like with Fallen Order. They were like, we want you to do this, and he literally just said, no, I'm not, like, we're not doing that.
Yeah,
and
EA
look at that
and
game.
Lucasfilm. Both of them are like, tell him, no, you're not making this game.
Especially doing that to Disney. That Disney's like the big bad, and he just went, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that may be a good idea, and other companies would definitely do that, but no. That would be a good no. Either we're making this game or you're not getting a game from us.
Yeah, and I think with his track record, like, they borderline have to say yes, because until he fails, at one game, you can't really say no to anything that he says, because everything he's touched has been some of the most popular games ever. So he's got that track record behind him that if he says, "No, we're doing this," EA would be very, very ballsy to say no to that and like fire him or do whatever with him. That would be borderline suicide for the franchise, I think. If unless he wants to do something that is just outlandish, then obviously maybe that's different. But I don't.
But hey, it can't be any worse than some of the decisions they made in 2042.
Yeah. I can't see him being.
He's like, guys, we need a scoreboard. They're
wrong.
like, what? No.
Oh god.
Yeah, I think honestly, I don't think people are appreciating what his decision to be in that spot with Battlefield is, to the extent that it is going to mean for the future. I don't think the broad Battlefield fan will ultimately know what this is going to impact the game for another couple years.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think this is the best decision that they have made in terms of the Battlefield franchise since Battlefield 4.
Yeah, and I've also heard like a lot of people who it seems they don't like the games that he's made and stuff. And that's fair enough. It's not every game he makes isn't the perfect game, but his track record, it's not about opinion. If you don't like Apex, that doesn't mean he's bad at his job. That just means that it's not the type of game you like. And so he's done it with... It's not like he's only the master of one type of game. He's made Apex a battle royale game. He's made... And when I say he's made, obviously there's a whole team behind it, but he's the guy leading that team. He's done Fallen Order, which is a single-player Star Wars game, which I would argue a single-player Star Wars game is the hardest thing to get right, because the Star Wars fan base is absolutely rabid. And if you f*** it up, they like, oh, you're not getting away with that. And he nailed it. Pretty much universally loved that game.
Yeah.
And then he's done it with Titanfall, which that wasn't a hero shooter. Obviously, it was a very different game with like the mechs and stuff, but it's not like he's only good at hero shooters. I had a lot of comments on the video sort of, you know, around that announcement. And a lot of people were saying like, oh, he only knows how to make hero shooters, but that's just, that's the thing about him. He doesn't seem to be the master of just one type of game. Like, he seems like he just steps into a game. He worked on Call of Duty, he worked on Apex, he worked on Fallen Order, Titanfall. He's kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything. And that's what makes me confident. If he was only good at doing battle royale games, then I'd be like, oh, geez, he's going to turn it into just a battle royale. But I just don't think that's the case. I feel like he just really does understand gaming in general, and I think he will make the right decisions for Battlefield, because I think he'll know what Battlefield is and what it needs.
I 100% agree. I think we're going to see a turnaround for Battlefield that we haven't seen for a while, and I think we're gonna be in a good spot here. And I want to kind of double down on this. This game will ultimately get to a spot that's going to be fantastic, or at least good. It will be a good game by the end of its life cycle. Hopefully, it will be a great game, and hopefully it becomes the platform that they continue to update the game. Honestly, it'd be awesome if this game goes through its first year, and in the second year they make it free to play. I mean, that would be a huge dedication to the franchise.
Absolutely. That's the type of stuff they need to do. They need to think outside the box and not be so set in there, like, we need to make X amount of sales. Like, just make your players happy. Happy people will spend money on your game. It's so simple. I don't know how these companies don't understand that. If you make people enjoy your stuff, they will spend money on it. It's literally as simple as that.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I could be the CEO of EA sometimes. I'm like, how do they not know? This is seriously so simple. I've never been to business school. I've never done any of that, and it's just so. There's obviously more to it than that, but like, make a
game, product that people want, and you will be good.
Make good things, and the thing that is good will be good for you also. It's so simple.
I love that Chinese proverb, man. It's one of my favorites.
I'm pretty sure Sun Tzu said that in The Art of War, actually.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. If not Confucius, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yep. Wow. Yo, EA, hit us up. If
you're looking for some new co-CEOs, I think we found you ones.
We can open up some time for some consulting work for sure. That's honestly what they should make the Game Changer program, or whatever it's called now. It should be in that higher level decision making than it is already. Instead of like, oh hey, this is something we've made, it should be like, oh hey, this is the idea that we're thinking. What do you think as longtime Battlefield fans? Like that would be huge.
That's one thing that they're not utilizing enough. They don't seem to actually listen to us at all. Like, I don't think any
until the game's out and it's reviewed poorly and doesn't go very well.
I think that having and maybe there's some level of bias because I'm in that network, but having a network of people that have been playing your game for years, and they not only have their own well-formed opinions, but they have their own communities where we all gather everyone else's opinions. Like from my small channel, I can sort of gather other people's opinions. Think about the guys like Jack Frags and Westy. Like they would know so much about not only how they feel, but how the broader community. Because like Jack Frags' channel is so big that like the general Battlefield player base, he would have a great understanding of how the general player base feels, because
the general gaming community.
Exactly.
That's how big he is.
Yeah. And so I really do. I've always kind of said that they do need to get us more involved, and it's not like what we say should go, but just like they kind of consult us and then they're just like, oh, thanks. And then like, that's it. There's nothing really further. And it just feels like you've got a bunch of people.
It says here on my schedule I'm supposed to meet with you, but it doesn't say I have to listen to what you say.
That's pretty much exactly it. So yeah, that's another great sort of idea from you, is that they need to get more. Yeah, they've got their own ideas, and they are game developers and we're not, so they have a better idea of how to make a game than we do. But we're the ones playing it, and we do definitely know. I would argue players know a lot more about what we want than they do. They know how to make a game better, but we know what we want way better than they do. And no amount of data they collect, no amount of this or that will ever be able to emulate the actual wants of the player base. The players know what they want more, and it doesn't always translate to what we want is the best, because there's a lot of things that we want that are terrible ideas. But when you have stuff that we want and stuff that they think, oh, that could work, that's when you start to, make some really good improvements by kind of combining the two things, rather than just it's all DICE or it's all the community, for example.
Yep. I 100% agree. It's a wealth of opportunity and knowledge that they aren't really utilizing very well. And I think that's ultimately, I mean, it's unique that they have such a program, and it's definitely unique in the whole of gaming. It'd be great to see that utilized to the extent that it could and should be. So we'll see. Hopefully they do make that decision. And I would love to see a free-to-play Battlefield game. Come on, guys. I think it'd be awesome.
100%.
Oh, sweet. I think with that, this, other than our live episode, I think we've surpassed the longest episode here.
Yeah, I think we have, actually.
So want to thank you all for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Battlefield Show. Would love to hear your thoughts as well. Send it in on Twitter at Battlefield Uplink, or on the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube. Reach out on either of our streams. Check out Sammy and I's YouTube channels, and definitely come join us. So, as always, we'd like to thank you for listening, Ethan Clark for the design of the beautiful thumbnail, and we'll see you all on the battlefield. This podcast is a production of Uplink Media Group. Uplink is a podcast network dedicated to highlighting the love and experience of gaming and pop culture. Check out our other show, Star Wars Uplink and The Forge, the Halo Infinite podcast, as well as our YouTube channels for even deeper dives into Battlefield, Star Wars, and more. YouTube.com/Uplink Podcast and StarWarsUplink.com.